Hello and welcome to Lawyers, a podcast for the people. Lawyers is a safe space to learn, grow, inspire, and be inspired. So come along and ride that fantastic voyage. Let us both be great together. I'm Attorney Wallace, Esquire, and I'll be your captain the whole time, and I sure am glad you're here. Lawyers is brought to you by Apex, where aptitude meets excellence. And powered by the Green Law Firm, your one-stop shop for everything real estate in Tennessee and Mississippi. Our voyage of five is brought to us today by Ahmed Cosme, featuring Maisha. The song is called Emptiness. It's written by our friend and previous lawyerish guest, Dennis Johnson, also known as Slashby. This is a new song, folks. What do y'all think? Is it a smash? Is it a pass? What are your thoughts? It's a smash for me. Real vibe. I like it. We've got an exciting show today. I'm excited to be back in the chair and back in the mix with each of you. So, let's get right in to do it over. All right, friends, it's time for Duly Noted. Today, my Duly Noted is an announcement and an invitation. It's a party, and you are invited. Yours truly is turning 40 years old. Yes, I know that's shocking. I don't look it, but I want to celebrate with all of my friends in my hometown here of Memphis, Tennessee. But that's not all. It's not just any old party. This is a 70s themed players ball. All right, it's going to feature special guests and prizes for the best dress, so don't skip out on the outfit. But here's the best part. It's a party with a purpose. We're working to raise money for a number of nonprofit organizations that I know and love. If you know me, then you know I am committed to service, and there's no better way to celebrate my birthday other than being surrounded by people I love while making a difference, while making an investment, right, in the future. What else? So, friends, mark your calendars. Save the date. It's October 4th through the 6th, 2024. The main event is October 5th at 6:30 p.m. We're gonna have a time, right? And we're gonna do some good as well. Details regarding the host hotel, the venue, the charities that we'll support, and the inspiration for your outfits can all be found at lawyerishthepodcast.com and on my personal Instagram at bwallyesq, also the Lawyerish Instagram, which is at lawyerishthepodcast. I'm excited to see you there, and I'm excited to do some good together. That's duly noted. We'll be right back with Lawyerish. All right, friends, we are back, and it's now time for Lawyerish. Our guest today is Matt Manning, Esquire. He's a civil rights and criminal defense attorney in the great state of Texas. He's been a district attorney twice over, as well as a city attorney. He's become affectionately known as Manning of the People, and he's currently in private practice at Webb, Queso, and Manning in Corpus Christi, Texas, where he maintains a robust civil rights, personal injury, and criminal defense practice. So we're very glad to have him here. Matt, welcome to Lawyerish.
Man, thank you for having me, brother. It's so good to see you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a long time coming. We've been talking about you being on the show for a while, and I know we took a bit of a hiatus, but we're back, and we're glad to welcome you on. So listen, let's talk about your law career a little bit. How did you decide to go to law school?
So, like a lot of lawyers, I was told at a young age, I quote, argued well, as they said. And when I went off to college, where you and I had the pleasure of meeting at Howard, taking some of the classes there as an undergrad really cemented for me my focus on not only becoming a lawyer, but working in the civil rights space, particularly constitutional law, and some of the other classes that I took related to history showed me how lawyers could be agents of change. So I saw it as an opportunity. And when I graduated, I got into the University of Toledo College of Law, where I got a full scholarship and just ran full speed ahead toward this career.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. It's not no easy task to get a full scholarship to law school. But did you know what practice area you wanted to go into when you went to law school?
I did, and that actually changed markedly while I was in law school. So when I went to law school, I was actually really interested in becoming a politician down the road. So I was interested in like municipal governance. So one of the clerkships I actually did in law school was for the city of Austin, my hometown, where I worked in, essentially their in-house counsel's office. Most cities have attorneys, as you know, and I got to see how they, dealt with land use issues, criminal issues across the gamut. So that's what I thought I wanted to do. But towards the end of my law school, particularly third year, most of my focus was on becoming a strong oral advocate because I recognized that that was the opportunity for me to really show the breadth of my skills, as if I could stand next to somebody who's accused or stand up on behalf of the state or stand up in general in court and comfortably and competently, advocate for a client. So that's where I put a lot of my focus. And that's why a lot of my practice has been focused on litigation, both in the criminal and civil space.
So how did you find your way into that practice area, right? So you graduate law school, you were on one path, and how did you sort of to focus on your oral advocacy? So how did you actually translate that from law school to now you're in the courtroom?
Well, frankly, my first job at a law school was as an assistant city attorney here in Corpus, where I live now. And, really, I just got thrown into the deep end. When you go into a prosecutor's office, you usually don't have too long a period where you're not actually in court, standing up, taking reps, so to speak, in front of a judge and in cases. So it happened pretty quickly that I was in court arguing cases. And that's really what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a litigator. So I appreciated that opportunity, and I just really ran full speed ahead towards that and took every opportunity I could to really try major cases and, bigger cases once I transitioned to the DA's office and did criminal defense work.
Yeah. Yeah, speaking of some of these high-profile cases you've had, I mean, I've seen you on television advocating for people. You've been on the radio. You've had some pretty high-profile cases. What would you say has been your most interesting case or client over the years?
Well, it's funny because that goalpost seems to move every week with every
Yeah, I
new
imagine
case
so.
that I get. But I would say one of the first cases, and really the case that kind of has given me the most of a platform, if you will, is a case I had in 2021 where a young black man on the outskirts of Corpus was hit with a stun gun by some teenagers who he played on the football team with, who were dressed up like Klansmen. And what's wild about that case is I got called about that case because I was representing another client whose ex-wife had passed away in a tragic accident. I was representing him and his child. And he's actually the one that called me because we got very close through my representation of him. And he said, "You won't believe what happened." And I really felt a moral duty, a duty as a father, a duty as a black man above all, to represent that young man. But I would say that's among the most interesting cases because that's something that society wants to believe doesn't exist anymore, but absolutely does exist these days. And when you have an opportunity to stand in and stand on behalf of someone who's been harmed that way, I think you have a moral duty to do it. So I would say that's among the most interesting cases I've had. But I've also prosecuted and defended a number of very interesting murder cases, which is kind of difficult to discuss, but including all kinds of issues and means of executing that crime. And those are interesting, I mean, frankly, but they're also disheartening because you see the worst side of society sometimes.
Sure. Well, I was gonna say this. Your civil rights work is sort of the real definition of standing on business, right? That is the crux of what it really is. But I want to delve into some of your criminal cases as well because it's very interesting to me because you see the criminal cases. This is the sort of stuff we see on TV. This is stuff that movies are made of, and I wonder. One of the things that I that steered me away from criminal law is it just felt like I didn't want to have the burden to take home. And I wonder, how do you deal with that, or is that a real thing, or is that something I made up, some fear that I made up in my own head?
No, I want to commend you for asking the tough questions. And that is one of the things that I recognized maybe 2 or 3 years ago was really weighing on me because most of my practice now is civil. I do some criminal defense. And I tell people that I think criminal defense is quintessential lawyering. I felt no stronger drive and no stronger sense of accomplishment than when I'm standing next to somebody who's accused, where everybody in the room thinks he's guilty and they got to go through me to get to him. There's just an element of superhero that I think is there. But yes, it absolutely weighs on me, and particularly being a prosecutor weighed on me because there are a lot of considerations. It's not just that one client, it's the community, it's our community as Black people, it is thoughts about the police, it's interactions with the police. I mean, there's so many things that coalesce. And then you have, somebody who's committed a bad act allegedly that you have to prove has committed that act. So it weighs very heavily on your shoulders, and it's very rewarding when you can find justice for people, but it's also difficult because if you're doing the job right, you have to stand against the police officers and the police unions and sometimes people who want you to cut corners to get a conviction, and you can't do that. So there's a big draw on your ethics and an emotional investment as well, but it's very rewarding work, notwithstanding all that.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly that being a criminal defense lawyer, that is quintessential lawyering. That goes back to the foundation and the heart of our country, right? That everyone deserves an opportunity to be heard in court, no matter what that looks like. I mean, no matter what they did or how we feel about it, right? Everybody has their day in court, and that's really just that's a foundational sort of component of our country, that everybody gets to be represented by counsel and gets to have their day in court, no matter what.
Absolutely. And, I tell people often that it is not difficult to divorce the idea of guilt in a vacuum. Like, I don't want to be around people who do bad things. Don't misunderstand me. But there are a lot of false accusations. There are a lot of times that people get accused of things where they're a little bit guilty, but they're not as guilty as they're being accused of. The charge is too high. And that's why you even find people like pastors. I know some pastors who are criminal defense attorneys, because at the end of the day, you get the opportunity to be heard and to be protected, because our Constitution affords you the right to an attorney and the right not to incriminate yourself. And I tell people, when I defend someone, I'm defending you, because if the state is able to trample their rights, the state is able to trample your rights.
And they certainly will, right? If they trample one person's right, they will trample yours too. And I think that's a message that's all too often lost in the nation. Because if we see it happen to one person, there's nothing stopping it from happening to you or I. So point well taken there. So you may have answered this already, but I want to still ask it anyway. It's one of my sort of signature questions. What would you say has been your best moment, and or what would you say would be your most teachable moment in your career thus far? You can answer both or one, or however the spirit leads you on that.
Well, I'll answer them in reverse order. And I chuckle because sometimes I'm such a true believer as an advocate that okay, let me say it this way. I'm the quintessential strategist. I at least try to be. So when somebody hires me, I tell them the good, the bad, and the ugly. I joke that I'm a doomsday lawyer. I'm going to tell you the absolute worst. I'm going to prepare you for the worst, and then we're going to fight for the best, right? But sometimes I'm so committed to my client that I don't read the room in the way I should. And a good example is, it's a minor thing, but it's funny. It's recent. I have a case where my client has not been charged with the crime yet, but she's got a high profile job and she can't, really afford to lose the job. So the judge is just kind of having these check-in pre-trials, but I feel like she has no duty constitutionally to do anything as a potential defendant. So the judge is asking us, oh, have you talked to the DA's office? Do you know what's happening? Blah, blah, blah. And I say, well, respectfully, Judge, she's got a constitutional right to not do anything but sit right there. So I'm not going to talk to the DA's office. And she says, okay, well, then we'll set it for a pretrial, right? And where I could have bought my client a lot more time in advocating for her, I didn't necessarily consider that. So sometimes I can be a little so married to where I'm trying to go that I can miss certain things, as anybody can. That's why they call it the practice of law.
Yeah,
but one of the things I will say is the best part of my practice and has been, really an extraordinary experience is not even just in the criminal context. It's just when I have a client who comes in and they're meeting with me in the worst time of their life, whether it's a criminal accusation or whether there's been a major loss in their family, particularly because most of what I do now is personal injury. And they come in with really tragic circumstances, and I'm able to shepherd them through the process to justice. And justice is not always holistic. It's not always exactly what they want, but it's better than where they were when they came in to meet with me. And I think the best part of it is just seeing goals accomplished. When people come in and they have no idea how to approach this issue, and I'm able to get them not only to justice, but get them to some sense of peace. That is really a remarkable power that I don't think a lot of people have in jobs that are not this job.
Yeah, I got to say that's one of the highlights of my work as well, is being able to help people win, right? Whatever their issue is, right? It's most of my clients are not doing having criminal issues, but they're working through transactions, and it just like doesn't seem like it's going to work. But we're able to over time get to a point where it's like, okay, we overcame that obstacle, and now we're in a different space. And I was sharing over the weekend that winning is one of my big things of being a lawyer, right? It makes me feel good to win. I like to win for my clients. So I know that you do as well. That's why you've been so successful. And I wonder, I mean, we've met at Howard University, and I wonder how you think your time at Howard prepared you for, the real world or the legal world.
So my time at Howard was not only formative, but it was invaluable in that I think it gave me, and you can probably echo this, it gave me a confidence that a lot of people who have education don't even get. Like being at a place like Howard, I mean, we know people who are literally the presidents of Fortune 500 companies right now, who have sold companies to Google, who have done these amazing things. And I think just being around that bastion of people who are vibrating at such a high level, who are so ambitious, and who, for the most part, are willing to help others along the way, to me, really cemented how I approach law and just gave me a confidence that I don't think I would have gotten anywhere else, college degree notwithstanding. So that's really what I got from Howard. But not only that, I mean, when we were at Howard, the Gen 6 was happening. There were a number of things that happened in terms of activism, and just seeing students following that long legacy of former Howard students and alums who really put it on their back and stood on business, so to speak. It just drives me, as a lawyer, if you come in, it's me and you 10 toes down till the wheels fall off, and it has to be. And I feel like I got a lot of that from Howard, just seeing that commitment. But I also wanted to amend my prior answer to tell you that one of the best things for me as a lawyer too is to help people that I know have historically not had a voice. And I don't even just mean in our community. I just mean people in our society who haven't gotten the breaks, who haven't had the privilege. And now in a criminal context, the whole state of Texas is saying they committed some heinous act. And now they have somebody who's not only listening, but who's with them no matter what. That's a lot of the beauty of what I get to do, is see people who haven't always been heard have not only an ear, but have a formidable mouthpiece now. That's what
Yeah,
I love about this job.
certainly the Howard way, and I know your voice is much needed in the state of Texas. Boy, that is you guys got a lot of work to do down there. Um, so let me get to my final question. I'm running out of time here, but I want to know. This is always my final question. It's one of my favorites. It's probably my favorite question. I want to know what advice you would give to your younger self, or to some current or future law student who might be listening.
Well, I'll say I got into law school with a full scholarship, but I struggled my first year. I struggled mightily. And one of the things I want anybody to know out there who wants to be a law student or any capacity, um, never be afraid to buckle down, but also remember you always have options. So if it's tough today or this semester, it won't always be tough. And you need to find a way to recalibrate to be successful and get where you want to go, which is, I'm thankful to God. That's what I was able to do. And obviously, I've been blessed to have a successful career. But that was an early point of adversity, and it really tested me in the crucible of, are you going to put up or are you going to back down? So one, don't back down. But two, never forget that you are always supposed to be where you are. I think a lot of times people, especially in law, because it's a very elitist kind of profession, sometimes people, especially us, Black people, can feel like we're out of place in the room. And we absolutely need to be at those tables. And even more, we need to be unafraid to demand a bigger part of the meal. So if you want to be a lawyer, go get it. There's a million people who've gone to law school before. Reach out to me. I'll give you my exact path. But it's easy to replicate. There are no secrets. And if we're doing our jobs right, we'll share that information on how you can get to where you want to go. So don't be afraid, set that point on the horizon and run full speed ahead toward it.
Well said. Well, thank you for sharing that, my friend. I thank you for taking the time out to chat with us today. I know your schedule's incredibly busy, but you've made it a point to be here today and share some really great nuggets of wisdom, and we greatly appreciate it.
Well, thank you, brother. It's a great pleasure to be with you, and congratulations on all your success. Thank you for doing this for the people. We so need mediums like yours, so I appreciate you and what you're doing.
Thank you, brother. All right, friends, we'll be right back with the wellness check. All right, friends, it's now time for our wellness check. And this week, I want to encourage you to go to the doctor to get that mammogram, go get that prostate exam, do that annual physical. Take care of yourself. You've got to do it. We've got to do it. In the past month, I've been very grateful to be able to get my teeth checked and cleaned, to get an eye exam, and to just recently do my annual physical. And I want to encourage you all to do the same. We need you here, friend. You got to take care of you. So go ahead and schedule that appointment. Do your work. Take care of yourself so that you can take care of the ones who are around you. And I must admit, this is not something I'm perfect at. That my eye exam I got, that was the first one. I don't even know when was the last time I had an eye exam. And my dental appointment was the first one since before the pandemic. Both of those exams, and so it's really way too long. And we need to do better, right? We've got to do better about taking care of ourselves. I'm committing to doing that, and I hope you will do the same. All right, remember, that's your wellness check. Remember to live life in peace and not pieces. We'll be right back with the Apex Highlight. All right, friends, we are back, and it's now time for our Apex Highlight. This week, I'm excited to chat with my friend and colleague, Miss Latricia Adams. She is the president and CEO of Young, Gifted, and Green, formerly known as Black Millennials for Flint. She also happens to be the youngest African-American woman on the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council and a proud graduate of Tennessee State University. Latricia, thank you so much for being on the show today. Welcome to Lawyerish.
Hey, so happy to be here. Good to see you, Brandon.
Good to see you as well. Thank you for being on. Really appreciate it. I know how busy your schedule is, and so I'm really grateful that you took the time to be with us today. Now, you are. Why don't we just? I want to start with. What do I want to start with you? There's so much to talk about. You are a real live mover and shaker. You're in this environmental justice world. You are an advocate. You've been an advocate for a long time. So why don't I do this? I want to start by how I know you, and I know you through what was Black Millennials for Flint. I had the opportunity to work for you and to be on the board of directors for a little while. And so why don't you tell us about Black Millennials? Well, we'll call it's Young, Gifted, and Green. Tell us how you started Black Millennials for Flint and how it transitioned over to Young, Gifted, and Green.
Yeah, so I would be remiss if I didn't say, because it's always so interesting to folks. My career actually started out being a teacher. I was a public education teacher. Actually worked in K through 12 for almost 16 years. But essentially, how I just went head in first into this environmental justice work was really due to the Flint water crisis. So I too am a proud native of Memphis, and Memphis is known for many things. One is barbecue, and one is good water because we have a natural sand aquifers. And so probably in the fall of 2015 is when I learned about the Flint water crisis for the first time. Now, it's important to note that the Flint water crisis literally next month will mark 1 decade. But I didn't learn about the Flint water crisis until a year after it happened. So that means that you had a majority Black, a majority, city in economic distress, really screaming from the top of their lungs to get people to believe them that there was actually something wrong with the water. And so in 2015, I was mad. I'm like, I
Yeah.
can't believe in the year of our Lord at that time, 2015, that we have an issue to this degree around drinking water. But this incident wasn't isolated, and it kind of opened up Pandora's box around not just Flint, Michigan, but majority Black cities across the country. And so therein lie this Black Millennials for Flint. I had no intentions whatsoever to one be in the environmental justice space, let alone to start a nonprofit. And so our initial work was very much so deeply rooted in supporting the Flint community. That has transitioned significantly over time, where initially it was to give resources. So immediate resources, meaning water. Also, in the beginning of the crisis, people were in extreme need of uh, Lysol wipes and other things to clean with. Because think about it, if your water is discontaminated, you literally can't use your water to clean up, right? So we did a lot of direct resources, a lot of fundraisers to get those resources secured, but realized very quickly that while that is a beautiful endeavor to be charitable, that's not going to address the systemic issues that allow for a Flint water crisis to happen altogether.
Yeah.
And so we became an official movement, my air quotes, if you will, on February the 10th, 2016. And people ask, like, where did y'all come up with that original name, Black Millennials for Flint? It's literally so simple. That's who was on the call. So I did a national call. I'm like, anybody, that wants to come and literally brainstorm around what can we do to wrap our arms around our brothers and sisters in Flint, Michigan. At that time, I lived in Washington, D.C. There was a significant amount of work on the Hill at that time, and this was under the Obama administration, to essentially get emergency funding to actually do the lead service line replacement. And so during the Obama administration, and this was towards the latter part of his second term, Congress was able to get past, I think, a little over $140 million. Unfortunately, literally a decade later, Flint still has not replaced all those lead service lines. That's another conversation for another day. But essentially, that catapulted my interests, my desires, my passion, not to sound super churchy, but I wouldn't be from Memphis if I didn't. Really just it was divine, like a spiritual calling to do something. And so interestingly enough, right in DC, there were issues surrounding lead and drinking water, where maybe like 2 weeks after we did our first service trip in Flint, we learned that there were instances of lead in school drinking water in our nation's capital. Taking it a step further, we realized that there are thousands of lead service lines that exist in my hometown of Memphis. This is just a pervasive issue that, again, is not just isolated to Flint, Michigan, but literally what happened in Flint with the Flint water crisis made the entire, not even nation, but the world wake up and really grapple with the insidious nature of our crumbling infrastructure in our country. And so, I mean, since 2016, it has been a journey. I mean, we grew and moved so quickly, it'll make your head spin. So we have since, expanded where we don't just work in Flint, but in the state of Michigan at large. Also work in the state of Maryland with the emphasis on Baltimore, which has significant issues with lead paint. But we are now learning, as they're starting to be more focused on lead service lines, they got some water quality issues there too. As I mentioned as well, Washington, D.C., Memphis, I'm sure that there will be additional add-ons as time progresses, but it has just been an honor to serve and be called to do this work. And so with the name change, ministry is still the same. Work that we're doing, scope of work is still the same, but it was time for us to reposition ourselves to, one, make it known that we don't just work in Flint, but the mission and the calling is much larger than that, right? And so Young, Gifted, and Green, actually, I was inspired by the song Young, Gifted, and Black, if no one made that connection, by the one and only late great Nina Simone. And really focusing on the need for young people to carry the torch as it relates to environmental justice issues. So that's how we got here. Switching over from a big movement that's still happening, but we kind of changed the name of it.
Now, I missed a little bit of that where you said how you came up with the initial name of Black Millennials for Flint. Did you say it was on a call?
It was a call. So literally, I come through social media. So I literally made kind of a bootleg flyer. We have come a mighty long way. And I connected with a lot of, because at that particular time, I used to be, I think I was the vice president of Thursday Network with the Greater Washington Urban League. Then I went on to become president. So I called upon a lot of other young professional chapters. A lot of them were concentrated in like the mid-Atlantic, so like the DC area, and then further northeast, like even as far up as to Buffalo, New York. And so I did a national call. We had at least like 70 people on that call. It literally was a conference call. That's before, Zoom was really zooming like that at that point. It literally was an old school conference call with a whole number and the code.
That's
and
right.
so on that call, that's how we came up with the name. That's literally who was on that call. Were Black millennials. And at that time, millennials has started to be like this new trend, right? And so that's literally how we came up with the name. In less than 24 hours, we had a logo. Shout out to Kenneth Worlds. Also a Memphian turned around that logo literally overnight and gave birth to what was Black Millennials for Flint. Yep.
Okay. And the rest is history. I mean, and actually, it's so interesting because you've done quite a bit of work. You've engaged a lot of other young people. You've got all these like working groups and clusters. You're educating. You're working with municipalities. Can you kind of speak to some of the accomplishments that you guys have been able to gain, I guess, over the years?
Yeah, so I think, and this is both for the culture and personal, I think that it is a significant win for me to have this White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council seat. One, even though I'm still young and tender, to be the youngest Black woman at this table. And it's just really such a full circle moment because everything around the work that we did, we emphasized the fact that young people have voice, young people have position, young people have power, and to literally see the trajectory of that narrative to manifest in this space. I will also say, to be more specific, is how our work transitioned from like being a direct service, providing resources and donations, which a lot of times people do. That's kind of like low hanging fruit, if you will. But we really have become like this public policy machine. So now at this point, when you try to get young Black Latinx voices on environmental policy, it's highly likely that we had some hand in that, right? Mm-hmm. And so some of the more specific wins that we have had in the policy front, one of the first bills that we got passed actually was in DC. It's long. I didn't come up with this name, but it's called the Childhood Lead Poison Prevention Amendment Act of 2017. My God. Ooh, the government loves a good name, a good long title. And so that bill to this day, right? So that was passed like 7 years ago, or was enacted 7 years ago, is the strongest bill around mandatory testing for lead in school drinking water. We have since got that bill replicated in other places. So we got it replicated in the state of Tennessee. That's a win. Yeah. A win for Tennessee. Is not the most progressive of places. Shout out to a phenomenal Black man who is now Shelby County Mayor, Lee Harris, that introduced that bill and got it passed when he served as a state senator. Representing Shelby County. We also got the bill replicated and passed in the state of Michigan, We didn't get that bill passed into last year.
Wow.
2023. Now, keep in mind the timeline around the Flint water crisis. It took that long. It's not on the docket that long, but a win is a win.
Yeah.
And then we also got some amendments passed as well to strengthen an existing bill that exists in the state of Maryland. And so, even with that, we've been very instrumental, even with providing insight to regulatory agencies. So we probably, not even probably, I know for certain, we had the most public comments from young people. So millennials were not the youngest anymore. So Gen Z is right, they're after us. I know we had to have had close to 150 young people to submit public comment for the lead and copper rule, where when you mention the education piece, is not just speaking out and, engaging through social media. If you truly want to make change, you have to have a presence in policy, but we also try to create spaces where it's safe, right? We don't learn about policy as Black folks. I mean, even, in K through 12, you take a half a semester of U.S. government. So part of the work that we also do is around civic engagement, getting people to understand how to work actively in our democracy, not just with voting. Voting is important, but it doesn't stop there. I also attribute that, to our work and as a win. And then the last thing I would say is we have built a tribe of people from different parts of the country that are advocating for environmental justice within their own respective communities. Whether that be from Flint, Baltimore, DC, Memphis, we're steadily growing with building this network of young, vivacious young people who really want to be change agents in their respective communities. So that's something that I take so much pride in, and definitely a win.
Yeah, and you should, right? That is, I can attest to that. That's one of the things that Young, Gifted, and Green has done over the years, is it empowers people, right? You're giving resources and you're giving structure. The energy is already there. The young people care about these issues because they impact them every single day. They live with them. And so what you've done and what the team over at Young, Gifted, and Green has done is provide, as you mentioned, a safe space for people to advocate and to learn. And I admire that so much, as one of the reasons why I have been honored to work with the organization and continue to support it as best I can. I don't know if you know it yet, but you guys are one of the organizations that's going to benefit from our
I
birth.
did not know that. So that's a surprise for me. Amen.
Yes.
Won't you do
So we're excited to be able to continue to support Young, Gifted, and Great. It's a great organization, and we're going to be encouraging people to help help you continue your great advocacy and policy work. And I also just want to mention that I love the fact that that you have pivoted to the power of policy. I just think that's huge, and you're right. It's something that we don't necessarily do enough, right? We think that casting our vote is enough, and while you're right, it is important. We really have got to stay engaged. That's a starting point, right?
Yeah.
You put your people in office, but then you gotta hold their feet to the fire. You've got to hold them accountable. You got to tell them what you want, and you've got to show why they should listen, right? And I think it's not just about voting and putting the right person in office, but it's also about pushing them to where you want them to be, because they've got a lot of competing interests, and so we've got to continue to show that our interests are the ones that are important, and that if you don't continue to push what we want, to push the policy, we're going to vote for someone else who's going to do it for us.
Exactly. And I'm glad that you mentioned that, and something that I'm beginning to notice more prominently now is to break down barriers of fear. I even can go back and look and think about some things that I have said, and I'm like, I can't believe I said that. But you know what? I said what I said, right? Like, it needed to be said, and really encouraging other people to have the same type of moxie, if you will, where really not being afraid of speaking truth to power, and really essentially dismantling systemic oppression. So, silence is loud and dangerous. And so part of that is like building capacity where people have an entry point on what to say and who to say it to. And I think like something that has been, so we talk about wins, that has been a win for me personally and spiritually, is being able to extend influence, shared power, where far too often, even within our own culture, within our own respective community, people hoard power and hoard influence.
Oh my
And
God.
part of the work of Young, Gifted, and Green, it flips that on its head, where essentially we want everybody to be a part of this movement, right? We want everyone to feel empowered and feel that they have influence to spark change. Because what I don't want to see is not to disparage at all our ancestors that came before us, particularly in the civil rights movement. We can't afford to maintain a messiah complex.
Mm,
When we think about the most pivotal movements throughout history, there wasn't just one leader. There were a
yeah.
multitude of leaders, right? Even when we think about church, and bring it up again, you have different ministries. Know your ministry. I know my ministry and I know my lane, but I also know when there's a gap, and to recognize the power and strength and influence of other people and how powerful it is when we bring that together to fight back against those things that are so harmful to our community.
I think that's so good. All right, I'm running out of time here, so I'm gonna skip one of my questions and go to my favorite one because I really want to get this one from you. What would you say, or what would you give? What counsel would you give to other young advocates, or maybe even to your younger self who are, kind of looking to get involved, or maybe passionate about something, or maybe they're a teacher, right? And maybe they think they're limited. What counsel would you give to your younger self or to someone else who might be in your shoes?
You are the expert of your own experience, and don't let anybody tell you anything different. And what I mean by that, especially as it relates to environment, sometimes it could be very unnerving, right? So, for example, I work with lawyers all the time. A large portion of my day in and out is working with lawyers, working with scientists. But at the end of the day, those individuals and those industries and those sectors cannot do their job without your narrative. So that would be the advice that I would give is don't feel nervous, don't feel less than, right? I was a school teacher and I'm proud to have been a school teacher. All my student loans are about teaching people's babies, right? And so it's not I'm just a teacher. I'm a teacher, or I'm a nurse, or whatever your contributions to society is, whatever your narratives, whatever your story is so vital to this movement to truly seek environmental justice, but also environmental liberation. So that would be my advice, is to be bold and audacious, and however you show up in this work, there is space for you.
Yeah, I'm out of time completely. I think that's well said, but I can't let you go without. I want to give you an opportunity to talk about how TSU sort of influenced you and prepared you for where you are today, all the way from the classroom to the White House. I mean, how did TSU get you ready for all that?
Yeah, so my journey to a HBCU is actually in grad school.
Okay.
So not an undergrad. When I tell you TSU prepared me for the world, it was so practical. I would say that TSU was so instrumental in my leadership around structure and governance, accountability, policy. The most life-changing course that I ever took in my life was educational policy. That literally was the launching pad, if you will, for what I do right now. And I have to say that the sense of community
Yeah.
and that people that actually care about you, you have real life relationships with your professors at HBCUs, whereas at my PWI, absolutely not. I was just one black dot in a sea of white, right? Whereas at a HBCU, it almost feels like you have parents, like right, like surrogate, like parents that are really there on your side. but have to attribute, like, I would not be the leader that I am today without that, phenomenal, rigorous coursework at Tennessee State, and just the resounding support that I have experienced for over a decade, almost 2 decades in a minute at this point.
Well, good. Thank you for sharing that. Shout out to Tennessee State University. You are making them proud. You're the illustrious Tennessee State University. You are making them proud every day, and I'm proud of you too. So thanks for being on the show. It's an honor to call you a friend, and I appreciate you spending the time with us today.
Thank you.
All right, friends, hold what you got. It's now time for our motivational moment. All right, friends, it's now time for our motivational moment, and Latricia did perfect, because what she talked about is what I want to talk about today, not being afraid or being afraid, right? I just want to remind us that to achieve success in life, it requires courage. At the end of the day, you must have courage. Victory and success do not come without courage. Sometimes you got to do that thing afraid. Doesn't mean that you won't be afraid. Doesn't mean that you won't get scared. Hell, I'm scared doing this podcast. But sometimes, most times, in order to do anything great, you have to have courage. You have to put on your boots, put on your helmet, put on what they used to say, what we used to say in football is you strap on that helmet. In boxing, we used to say you put in that mouthpiece, you bite down on your mouthpiece, and you just got to go for it. It's terrifying, it's scary, but in order to win, you've got to have courage. So that's our motivational moment today. Do that thing, do it afraid, do it however you got to do it. But have courage and win the day. That's your motivational moment, friends. We'll be right back to wrap things up. Well, friends, we've done it again. Another successful episode. Thanks so much for listening and for watching. This wonderful episode has been brought to us. This Voyage Vibe has been brought to us by Asim. This is, as we discussed before, let's see, let me make sure I get the name right. I want to make sure I get the name right. This is a great new song. I think we're going to need to remember this name. This guy's going places. This is Ahmed Kazmi, featuring Maisha. The song is called Empty Nest. I want to thank my guests, Matt Manning, Esquire, and Latricia Adams. They were great today. Really enjoyed speaking with them. Shout out to Howard University and to Tennessee State University and to all HBCUs around the country. Remember, this Lawyers is brought to you by Apex, where aptitude meets excellence, as well as powered by the Green Law Firm, your one-stop shop for everything real estate in Tennessee and Mississippi. Email your questions and send your feedback to lawyerish@apexgroupdc.com. I think that's it. I'm looking forward to the next episode, guys. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. Every voyage is just a little bit more fun if you can bring a friend or two along. Thanks for sharing this journey with me, guys. We'll see you next episode. Don't miss out.